January 1994, Waterford City, Ireland. 22-year-old Imelda Keenan was engaged to Mark Wall, and the couple was sharing an apartment, no doubt eagerly anticipating their big day. The couple had been engaged since 1989, and they planned to get married in Rome, but they hadn't set a date just yet. At the time, Imelda was studying computing at a school in Waterford, and she was on winter break. On January 3rd, Imelda told Mark that she needed to run some errands. First, she had to go to the post office and collect a welfare check, then go buy some kitty litter. According to Mark, his bride-to-be washed her hair, made him some tea, applied her makeup, and then left the apartment at around 1:30 p.m. She was wearing leopard print ski pants, a white jumper, and a denim jacket. Everything seemed completely normal to Mark, although in hindsight he overlooked one small detail. That day just so happened to be a bank holiday, meaning the post office would be closed. Imelda wouldn't be able to pick up the welfare check. This very well could have been a simple oversight on Imelda's part and isn't necessarily suspicious, but it is an interesting detail to note. Not long after leaving the apartment, a witness saw Imelda at Lombard Street. This woman was a local doctor's secretary, and she recognized Imelda. As the secretary drove from Lombard Street to William Street, Imelda stopped walking in the middle of the road in order to let the car pass. After passing, the secretary saw Imelda around the corner of the Tower Hotel onto Lombard Street. Imelda's niece, Gina Carey, stated, "We also dispute the sighting of Imelda on William Street. We think that may be a case of mistaken identity, or that the sighting relates to a different day." If this sighting was accurate, then it would be the last time anyone ever saw Imelda Keenan. Imelda's family hadn't seen her since 2 weeks before Christmas. Gina Carey reported that she was talking to her brother Ned in the Three Ships pub and they had a chat. Imelda had presents for his 2 boys, and there were presents given to Imelda as well. They were still under her tree in the flat when she was reported missing. What's more, Ned had wanted to visit his sister in late December, so he called her 2 days in a row. He never got a response. Instead of a happy reunion with her family, Imelda was reported missing on January 3rd. Her family arrived at her apartment and noticed that her glasses, cigarettes, and handbag were all still there. Imelda always wore her glasses and wasn't known to leave them behind, whether on accident or on purpose. Furthermore, there was a Christmas wreath that she had planned on placing at her father's grave still in the apartment. All of her Christmas presents were still unopened under the tree as well. Due to these details, her family believed that Imelda had been murdered before Christmas but had only been reported missing on the 3rd. Intriguingly, Mark didn't report her missing for several days after she left on the 3rd, and he even reported that she had told him she was extremely depressed. For my fellow Americans watching this video, the Gardaí is the Irish National Security and Police Force. According to Imelda's family, they did not treat her disappearance as suspicious. Instead, they wrote it off as a runaway case or possibly a suicide. They never searched her apartment or performed any forensic examinations on any evidence. This apparent laziness has caused widespread criticism of their handling of the case. The only thing they could tell her family is that her personal public service number was never used again, and the last welfare check she collected was sometime between December 20th and 24th of 1993. Searches of local areas and a nearby river turned up nothing, and communication with the Welsh police and Manchester Interpol have also uncovered no new information. In 2012, a tip led the Gardaí to search a bungalow in Ferrybank, but this search also came up empty-handed. Imelda's family erected a plaque on the bridge where she was last seen to serve as a memorial to her. One final detail about Imelda's disappearance was brought to public attention by her niece Gina. According to Gina, Imelda had always been known to keep a very extensive diary. She was an avid record keeper of her own life, and her diary was always in her apartment. However, when Imelda's family searched the apartment, her diary was missing. Gina recalled seeing a diary in the apartment before her aunt's disappearance, but afterwards, it was nowhere to be found. Her family believes that Imelda's diary could very well hold the key to uncovering the truth behind her disappearance, but to this day, it has never been found. The most recent update on the case came in January of 2024, when Imelda's family disclosed new evidence to the Gardaí. They publicly stated that Imelda's friends might have crucial information in her case, but they did not say what that information might be. The only hint we have comes from Gina yet again, who stated that the family does not accept Imelda vanished on January 3, 1994, as has always been believed. Instead, we are convinced she was murdered in the run-up to Christmas 1993, after a difficult time in her life when she had been under extreme pressure. Gina also proceeded to say that Imelda had sustained several injuries and had been using a neck brace and crutches in the early 90s, but she didn't actually know the cause of those injuries. To this day, Imelda Keenan's disappearance has never been solved. Her body has never been found, and her case has never been upgraded to a homicide investigation. As the years slip by, the likelihood of discovering the truth becomes slimmer and slimmer. Sally Cheong was born in 1985 to her parents Wah and Kim Cheong. They lived in a suburban neighborhood in Melbourne, Australia, with Sally's grandparents and 4 younger siblings, Helen, Andrew, Wendy, and Anna. According to Helen, their parents raised them in a fairly traditional way. They were expected to respect their elders, do well in school, and help the family with their business. Sally attended the Presbyterian Ladies' College in Burwood, where she studied computer science. However, she started working at her parents' Asian wholesale food business in order to help the family, which took her away from her passion for computer science. By all accounts, Sally was a self-sacrificing young woman who gave more than she took. In a blog post, one of her friends described Sally as a gorgeous girl with an infectious laugh and a caring, kindest, most trusting nature. This friend also admitted that Sally could be a little too trusting at times, which worried her. Despite this, she was extremely family-oriented and was known to translate things for her parents. Sally spent most of 2007 studying in Beijing, China, and only returned home in early 2008. While in the People's Republic, she worked on improving her Chinese, and she made several new friends. After her time abroad, Sally expressed her desire to have some more freedom in her life, which was completely unexpected. Helen stated that she thought her sister had changed a lot during that time. On March 3rd of 2008, Sally sent an email to a male friend in which she expressed her concern that he might harm her. She stated, "I think I know what you are doing. I'm afraid you gun me down or get angry." On April 1st of 2008, Sally's father, Wah, returned from a business trip in Adelaide at around 10 p.m. After grabbing a bite to eat, he went to check on his daughter and leave a set of keys to the family's van on her dressing table. He called Sally's name to see if she was awake, but she wasn't. According to Sally's sister Wendy, she had been on her computer in her bedroom at around 3 a.m. when she heard a noise in the hallway. She assumed it was her mother, so she closed the laptop and pretended to be asleep, but her mother never entered her room. Instead, when she peeked out of the covers, she saw someone standing outside Helen's room and then outside Sally's room. She then heard a male voice say something that sounded like, "Yeah." At the time, she assumed it was Helen's boyfriend, who had snuck into their house in the early hours of the morning on several previous occasions. After this, Wendy saw Sally walking down the hallway from the direction of the bathroom. She didn't suspect that anything was wrong, so she didn't get out of bed. She drifted off to sleep, completely oblivious to the nightmare she would wake up to. Wah got out of bed at 7:30 a.m. He found the keys to his BMW and his business on the floor outside his room. He assumed that Sally had placed them there, seeing as how she had been the last person to drive the car. He left for work, but called home at around 9 a.m. Sally's brother Andrew answered the phone, and Wah instructed him to give Sally his mobile phone, which he had forgotten at the house. Sally would then bring the phone to her dad at work. Strangely, Andrew couldn't find Sally anywhere in the house, so he gave the phone to Anna instead. At around 10 a.m., Anna texted Helen asking if she knew where Sally was. Helen said that she was probably with her boyfriend and she would check in with him. Helen finally contacted Sally's boyfriend at 1 p.m., and he told her that he hadn't seen or heard from Sally that day. The Cheong family contacted the police as soon as they realized nobody knew where Sally was. The authorities arrived at the Cheong family residence and questioned everyone there. Helen reported that she had heard Sally's cell phone and a landline in her bedroom both ringing repeatedly between 10:30 and 11 p.m. on the night in question. Sally never answered any of the calls. In fact, the police have since discovered that Sally hadn't used her cell phone since the night before she disappeared. They also found that several personal items were missing from Sally's bedroom, including her wallet, keys, iPod, and a blanket that she had owned since childhood. The police speculated that she must have taken them with her when she left the house in the company of the mail Wendy had heard that night. Oddly enough, Sally's passport and car were still at the house. Detective Senior Sergeant Ron Iddles stated that there are two main possibilities: that she left with somebody she knew and for whatever reason something has happened to her and she has been unable to return, or for some reason she has decided that she wants to walk away from the family. There was some suggestion she may have gotten another passport when she was overseas, but we can't substantiate that. There are some people who say she didn't like working in her parents' factory, that she found it onerous. Now it may be, for whatever reason, she's decided she doesn't want that and that she can't tell her mom and dad she didn't want that life and she has decided to make a life for herself. He also urged Sally to at least contact the police and tell them she is safe if she did run away, but they have never received any communication from Sally. Helen stated that her parents sometimes traveled to China in order to see psychics and tarot card readers, desperately hoping to get some information about their missing daughter. According to Helen, they usually came back and told their other children that Sally was living in China, but they never offered any proof, and it was always just the word of the mystics they had visited. Helen has also said that, "We want to believe she has run away. I am leaning towards that she has probably run away, mainly because she brought with her the little blanket that she had since childhood, and that's not normal for her to just bring that out on a normal day out. And if something bad happened to her, it would be strange for her to bring that with her, unless the person who took her knows about the blanket. I think there is someone out there who helped her if she did run away." To this day, Sally's bank account and credit cards remain untouched, and she has never been found. Her family still maintains hope that she will return to them one day, but that has yet to happen. Hopefully that will change soon, and we can get some answers. Click on the Join button to become a channel member today. Channel members receive exclusive content and early access to all my content. On March 27th of 1973, a man was walking his dog along a cane field in Barbados when the canine broke free of his grasp. It bounded off into the field and came back a few minutes later, carrying a human skull in its mouth. The man contacted the police immediately, and a massive search effort was launched on the plantation. The next day, law enforcement discovered a complete set of skeletal remains that were adorned in a hand-knitted multicolored top with a brown skirt. To their shock, these were the exact same clothes that a woman had been wearing when she had gone missing on March 12th of that same year. 18-year-old Golda Dash had lived in Vaucluse tenantry in St. Thomas Parish. She had been a mother of two daughters, one girl being 2 years old and the other being 9 months. She still attended school and the church where her cousin was a pastor. Golda was described as quiet and shy. At 6:45 p.m. on March 12th, she had left home to go to work in Bridgetown, the capital of Barbados. After she failed to return home, she was reported missing and an extensive search effort began. The police had been extremely confident that they would find her. After all, Barbados is a small island that you can drive around in just 3 hours. They questioned Golda's family and spent weeks scouring the island for any trace of the missing girl, but nothing was found. The man's dog had done what law enforcement could not. Golda's death was ruled a homicide and an investigation began, but detectives hardly made any progress. There were no leads on people who might have wanted to hurt Golda, and none of their efforts uncovered any suspects. The case almost immediately went cold. Local residents were terrified by the murder, and many of them refused to go outside at night, but these feelings were eventually forgotten as Golda's case faded from memory. On October 18th of 1980, a caddy at the Sandy Lane golf course was fetching a ball that had rolled under a bush when he accidentally discovered a human corpse. The police were contacted and they confiscated the remains, determining that they belonged to a woman who had gone missing on September 25th of that year. Janet Smith, whose age was either 18 or 35, different sources give different ages, was the mother of a 2-year-old boy. On the day in question, she left her son at home and went to work at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, where she was a nurse. Her entire shift was completely normal and nothing out of the ordinary happened. She left at 8 p.m. and attempted to call her father, who didn't answer. Janet was last seen at a bus stop and the police assumed she had wandered off or suffered an accident due to her mental illness. Janet had sustained a brain injury in an accident. They never suspected that she had been murdered. On April 4th of 1982, locals and government officials decided to clear out the cane field at Bell Plantation. During the clearing process, workers stumbled across the dead body of yet another woman. The police were contacted and they examined the remains. The woman had 2 gold-capped teeth, one of which was heart-shaped and the other a zodiac sign. The authorities published their findings in a local newspaper, hoping that somebody would be able to identify the body. On April 22nd, the sister of a woman named Cheryl McCollin reported that the body was Cheryl. 15-year-old Cheryl McCollin had moved out of her parents' home in Bridgetown and hadn't been in contact with them ever since. Her family had never reported her missing because they had believed she was living her own life elsewhere. Cheryl's death was what finally prompted investigators to consider the possibility that they had a serial killer on their hands. They began investigating this possibility, but the bodies kept coming. On May 19th of 1982, a man was cutting cane stalks at Kent Plantation when he came across several stalks that had been burnt. Alongside these stalks was a set of bones. Initially, he believed they belonged to an animal, but he ended up finding more bones that made it clear the remains were human. When the police examined the bones, they found a bangle and a gold chain with the name Margaret inscribed on it. The medical examiner determined that Margaret had been murdered. The police contacted the family of a woman named Margaret Turton, who had been reported missing on August 16th of 1981 after she failed to return home from a restaurant. Margaret's family identified the bangle and chain as having belonged to their 23-year-old Margaret, who had lived in Bush Hall with her boyfriend. She had been the youngest of 8 children and the mother of a 5-year-old boy. Margaret's murder confirmed that there was a serial killer operating in Barbados, but this mysterious individual had one more body to deliver. On the same day that Margaret's remains were discovered, a 5th woman went missing. 23-year-old Sandra Robinson had lived with her mother in Long Bay and left home to attend a job interview. On June 5th, the crop over cane cutting and piling contest began in Vaucluse, and Sandra's ID card was found alongside her underclothes and handbag. The police arrived on the scene and started a body recovery effort. It only took 3 minutes for a police sniffer dog to pick up the scent and lead officers to Sandra's decomposed remains. The body was naked except for stockings, shoes, and a watch. Some of her clothing was scattered around the crime scene, and the knife that had been used to cut her throat was also present. Sandra's mother identified her. The police searched Sandra's home and found her copy of a local newspaper in which she had circled an ad for a job interview. The ad did not have a phone number listed, so the police decided to go to the P.O. box provided, but it turned out to be fake. Detectives realized that similar ads for job interviews had appeared in the newspaper around the times of the other murders. They had a clear modus operandi for their serial killer. They released this information to the public in the hopes that it would turn up some new information. A 28-year-old woman reported that she had responded to an ad about a job as a sales assistant. This ad actually had contained a phone number, and the person on the other end had a foreign accent. They told her to come to a house in Maxwell. When she showed up at the house, there wasn't any activity inside. After she entered, a man approached and told her to follow him down a dark passageway so that he could train her. However, she became extremely suspicious, so she allowed the man to walk down the passageway and then she left. As she was exiting the home, she saw 4 pairs of women's shoes. She also remembered seeing a shirtless man emerge from the bushes near the house and start looking for her. Sometime in 1982, the Canefield killer struck again, but this time he was unsuccessful. The staff at a plantation office was closing up for the night when an exhausted woman came running out of the cane field. Her clothing was torn and she was panting heavily. She explained to the workers that she had almost been murdered, and they brought her to the hospital. The police took her statement and questioned her. The woman was from Ashton Hall, and she had responded to an ad for a job interview. When she arrived at the given address, the man told her that they needed to discuss things with his business partner. He proceeded to lead her into the cane field, where he produced a knife and attempted to kill her. Fortunately for the woman, luck was on her side. It had been raining heavily that day, and the killer continuously slipped on the ground, allowing her to make a break for it. He chased her, but she managed to find a ditch to hide in. She eventually heard his van drive away, but she was scared that he was trying to trick her into coming out of the field. The woman's instincts turned out to be correct. She heard the van drive away for a second time a few hours later. Law enforcement had already constructed a psychological profile of the killer, which matched with 3 men in the area. One of these men was considered the main suspect, and the police showed a picture of him to the woman. She identified him as her would-be killer. In a baffling twist, despite this man being a clear suspect, his name and appearance have never been made public. Some people have speculated that the suspect was actually a scapegoat used to cover up the real killer, who was an influential member of the community. This theory has never been proven. The police obtained a search warrant for his home, but they never executed it. The suspect allegedly sold his business equipment and fled the country, going to Florida in order to visit some family. The FBI were contacted, and they tracked him down to an apartment in Dade County. When the authorities arrived at the apartment, he was nowhere to be found. He never returned to that apartment. The case eventually went cold and was shelved. It was briefly reopened in 2007 by a cold case squad, but they were unable to find anything new. The Canefield killer has never been publicly identified, and he was never brought to justice. If he is still alive, he's probably pushing 90 years old. It seems very likely that time will deliver the justice that law enforcement never could.